Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and I want to address some things in the comments I saw where this new Naboo raid that a lot of people are saying is killing guilds, especially smaller guilds, like it's killing small guilds, like we're never going to exist, and I want to kind of address that because while I do think this raid is maybe the coup de grace or killing blow, if you will, for some smaller guilds to disband, it is not like fully to blame. I think that's a little bit harsh. So we're going to deep dive that. We will talk about some of the things you can do to avoid this and maybe give you guys, put you at ease of, finding a guild and everything. So please like and subscribe, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Let's give a massive shout out to our channel members, as always, for continuing to support me through thick, thin, good and bad videos. Thank you guys again for your continued support. It is so much appreciated. I know that lately on the weekends I haven't been showing up, just like Harry Kane decided he wasn't going to show up to the Euros. So, thank you guys. Let's get into our video. Sorry, I wasn't completely trying to rip on my England fans. I was pulling for you guys all tournament. Just unfortunately, Gareth Southgate was your problem. So anyway, let's get into our video. So is this raid killing guilds? It is a valid question because whenever stuff like this raid come out, whenever new content like this comes out, there's always a mass exodus of players kind of leaving guilds, trying to find a new one. But you can't blame it all on the raid because the death of a guild or, a player leaving a guild, whatever the case is, like I kind of call it the death of a guild, Arthur Miller's death of a salesman kind of thing here. It's not an overnight process, right? It's kind of like picture like a piece of wood, right? And it's got all this different weight on it and you've got all the supports underneath it holding it up. Well, if each of those supports is, meant to hold a different amount of weight, and this weight is evenly distributed across the guild, there's going to be some where it's fine and some where it's, sagging, and so you right-size that, and it's kind of like a guild, right? Some players have more galactic power, others don't have as much, and you kind of offset that so everybody can support the guild from the bottom up. Hey, maybe this guy's got to carry a little bit more weight, but, this guy's doing everything he can kind of thing. So just bear that in mind. But what happens is that as you put more and more pressure on that piece of wood, if everybody isn't trying their hardest and trying their best, those cracks begin to form. And so it starts to go like this and this and this, and then you add in the new raid and it breaks. So while the raid is what broke, there were all these other issues that had been kind of building and putting that pressure on top that now caused the guild to disband. And I am saying this from the perspective of someone who has been through plenty of guilds kind of disbanding, whether through some fault of my own or zero fault from my own, to be perfectly honest. So I want to walk you through some of those things and kind of explain that, yes, this raid is playing a role, but that the cracks were probably already there and you just didn't see them. So one of the first ways that I've seen a guild fall apart was a disagreement of the officers. So there was just the officers couldn't really figure out which direction they wanted the guild to head in. And so, like, some wanted to go to here and others want to go to there, and so the guild disbanded. That's okay, right? It happens. It just really was obviously when officers argue, it's really bad. And so one of the things I want to give a huge shout to my, the group of officers here is that we are very open and honest with each other. We try to have those tough conversations with each other before we have them with the guild. When we were kind of deciding whether to focus on the speeder bike raid or go for territory battles and hit the Naboo raid hard, we had all of those internal discussions ourselves. Before we said, hey guys, what are you thinking? We as an officer group kind of got united, put everything together, and we had what we were thinking, but wanted to see, does that match up with what the guild thought? And it was honestly pretty split between the two, and the going territory battles towards Naboo raid ended up winning out. But because we had that discussion and we came to that agreement that we'd kind of leave it up to the guild, we were able to get through it together, and that was a very important thing. So, officers disagreeing. Sometimes if you're not an officer, you might not see it, but it can really eat a guild alive from the inside. Another way is just lack of participation, right? If you're not participating, it eats away at people. Those guys who are going hard and doing everything they can in the raid, if you're just constantly seeing people, and I'm like, we still have over a day left, so I'm not trying to rag on these guys. But if I'm constantly seeing, I'll use Shira here because she's an officer and like very solid, but Shira's constantly posting zeros in the raid and we're like, come on, like we're trying to score points here, like we're trying to get to the next box and you're sitting there with zeros, like that can eat away at people. And so a lot of times when a guild falls apart because of lack of participation, it's not because of 50 players not playing the game, right? It's normally like a handful of accounts that are just dragging the whole group down, and you can't really replace them because there's too many, and it's just like, I've got to go, right? That's a big one. Or even the players who have mixed, what's the wording I would use here? There's I kind of call it like the different levels of competitiveness. So I myself am I would say more on the side of hyper competitive than just like competitive. That I'm a little bit more, like, in the way I would describe that is like, you can be competitive, but if you know that your guild is only going to get the 130 million box, you're not going to score any more points because you got to the 130, it doesn't matter. The kind of hyper competitive in me says, I'm still going to try and score as many points as I can, like, within reason. I don't go crazy, but like, I'll still try and score as many points as I can within reason. Even if it's not going to make a difference in my guild or my personal rewards, I still want to show that I'm participating to the fullest that I can. But having those differences can be really, really challenging. And that can kind of eat away over time, that burnout takes effect, or, as things change and, the game gets a little bit more demanding, not everybody keeps up, and that's okay. Everybody's allowed to play at their own pace. But my last guild, that's kind of what ended up happening and the reason it fell apart. And I take a big chunk of that responsibility myself, that being an officer, I knew that saying, hey, I'm going to be looking for another guild, I knew what that could cause. And, I just had to do what was best for me. So I always say that I know what I did, and I will, still have a lot of regret at times that the guild did fall apart, because I had a lot of fun there. But overall, the change that I've made to Sigma has been for the best. But yeah, like that guild didn't fall apart because of like one thing. It was just a multitude of stuff that all kind of came in and just sunk it. And it wasn't like I was the best player in the guild, not even close to it. There were guys who were way better than me, had way better accounts than me. Shout out Button, shout out Lita, shout out Poma. I mean, a whole list of guys who had better accounts than me. Just, I was like, I don't really feel like I'm getting the rewards that I should. And all of them are sitting there like, Phil's right. Like, yeah, like he's, Phil's saying that, like, I have a better account than him. And I'm like, yeah, you guys do, like, you deserve better. So like, I reckon, like, you got to have a little bit of, self-reflection there, right? But all of this to like smaller guilds, it's not one thing. It's not just this raid. Like, I think this raid in a way has actually been much more friendly to smaller guilds, because everybody has kind of already been right-sized. And what I mean by that, if I flip over to SWGOH.gg here, right? So this is my guild. So our best player here, so we have an average of 11.8 million GP. And our top player GP-wise, Kyle Katarn, has 13.1. If you go down to the bottom player in the guild, it's Kilo here with almost 10.9 million galactic power. So when you take that into account, you're like, okay, so there's a big gap between the first guy and the second. But what about when you go from, say, the second lowest, which is like Lysa here at 10.9, almost 11, to 12.8. Now that gap got, okay, we're getting smaller. Darth Noodle's third largest to, third smallest, you're looking at 1.6 million GP. And so that gap gets closer and closer. And when you start kind of looking in here, you can see that a lot of accounts are in this low 12s, high to mid 11s range. That's where a lot of us exist. And this has kind of been the direction the game has been trending in for a long time. That in the past, you would see a lot of guilds with the top 10 were huge, and then you'd have a big gap down here and a bigger gap down here because you were just trying to find players. Now, the game has really right-sized itself. It doesn't, the Rise of the Empire, the Raid, and everything, without a large account, it's much more difficult to score really well because of all of these changes. That just because the top end of your account is great, if you don't have all the pieces you need for this raid or operations, that hurts the guild. So that is something that I think, this raid, we've already been right-sized from the Speeder Bike raid, from the Crate Dragon raid, and Rise of the Empire, that I don't think this one has really killed that many guilds compared to when I remember the Crate Dragon came out, Rise of the Empire, or even going all the way back to the Challenge Pit raid and even the evolution of Territory Battles itself. I mean, guilds were splitting left and right. And the other thing when you say, like, killing a guild that I think people get scared about, it doesn't mean that 50 players just stop playing the game. I've seen some where it's all 50 players are going to continue playing. They're just not going to continue together, right? That some guys are too competitive, some aren't enough or whatever, or maybe a handful retire, but that the vast majority go find other places to go play Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. And that's a big part of why I say that I don't think that many guilds have actually been killed by this raid, is that we're already right-sized, and that, maybe X guild ceases to exist, but this new one was created through something else. I've been in plenty of alliances where a new guild has spawned because, a guild outside of it died, and you kind of right-size everything. I've been a part of plenty of those where, I remember way back in the day, man, I was part of what was called BHG at the time, and this is circa 2017, 2016, and 2017 maybe. A while ago, long time ago. I'm dating myself. But the top guild split over a matter of difference, right? Like the top guild, like way above me. And so what they did is, that top guild split. Some guys wanted to stay, a bunch left, and they absorbed all those lower level players into various guilds. And so we kind of lost one at the top, but you didn't lose one at the top. We just kind of filled it in from everybody else, and it was this big shakeup. But that is one of the benefits of kind of being in an alliance during situations like this, is there's a safety net, right? So just, shout out to any alliance, not just the Sigma one. Carnival of Chaos is another great one. I think I've been in like the Knight Alliance for like Marvel Strike Force or something. Like there's been a couple of alliances that are really, really solid that kind of keep everybody together and make sure that guilds don't just fall off the radar. So, while I agree that I think this new content can sometimes be the killing blow, it's not the sole reason, right? It's a multitude of issues. And so if you're wondering, like, hey, is my guild going to die? Like, do I need to search for a new one? Have that conversation. Kind of look for some of those warning signs. Look to see, is there consistently a few players that are holding you guys back from completing something? If you're looking in your guild and you're like, hey, we're all kind of the same like power level here, I wouldn't be too concerned, because if you're seeing a big gap between maybe your top 10 and your, the next ones, maybe you think about it, because if those players decide to leave, what happens, right? Other ways you can sometimes kind of sense it is if you kind of have had players leaving after territory battles multiple times, like within the span of a month. If you have like 4 players leave, that's normally not a great sign kind of thing, So there's sometimes some warning signs that you can kind of prepare for. And the final thing I'll say, guys, I'll kind of leave you with this. You need to do what's best for your account. As much as I love to say, yes, be loyal to your guild, at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for you. And if that's staying with your guild, great. Like sometimes it's not about being in the best performing guild. It's about being in the guild that matches your playstyle, that matches what you're able to do. I know a couple of guys who were like, nah, I don't want a really competitive guild. Like I need one that fits around my work style. I don't want to have to do this. I don't want to have to do that. And that's perfectly okay, right? Don't feel bad that you're not as competitive as Fat Phil. I can tell you guys right now, there are not that many people who are more competitive than me. Like you're talking to a kid who would try in gym class because like I just hate to lose. Like I've gotten better in my older age, and I say older age at like 30, but like I hate to lose in friggin' anything, right? Like I cannot stand to lose. Like there have been Monopoly boards split at my house over who won and lost. Like it's bad, right? My brother and I have gotten into like fist fights over it. But that's okay, right? If you're not that competitive, then don't look for a guild that's that competitive. So yeah, I wanted to kind of do this video because I wanted to address this, that I don't want this, there's a lot of negativity around this raid, and I hope that there's some fixes, and I need to talk about some of the stuff I hope to see change, but I don't want this raid getting blamed for a guild dying. That was probably a long time coming, and this was just the coup de grace, right? This was that, Gears of War, I lancered you down, and then I'm coming over to curb stomp you. Like, the raid was the curb stomp, but, the full clip of Lancer to your body is what, really killed you. So, hopefully that analogy sticks. Let me know your thoughts. I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.